Today you don't have to be an expert in climate change to see that we have extreme weather conditions which are doing a lot of harm to all people all around the globe. Dear President Ivanov, dear Mark, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, young leaders, it's an honor to be here with you today and to have an opportunity to speak at the Ohrid Cultural Diplomacy Forum. I will use this opportunity to discuss a subject that lies at the heart of the prosperous and stable society, the impact of economic development on peace and democracy. These three pillars, economic development, peace, and democracy, are deeply interconnected, and together they form the foundation upon which nations thrive. The ways in which nations grow economically has a far-reaching consequences, shaping the very fabric of their political systems and the peace that sustains them. At its core, economic development refers to the progress of a nation's economy marked by higher standards of living, increased job opportunities, better infrastructure, and sustainable growth. But the significance of economic development goes beyond mere statistics. It influences the social fabric of a nation. In a society where economic development is inclusive and equitable, it fosters peace. When people have access to employment, fair wages, healthcare, and education, the likelihood of conflict and unrest diminishes. Poverty and economic inequality, on the other hand, have historically been breeding grounds for tension, discontent, and even violence. Economic deprivation could lead to desperation, and in such a social context, conflict becomes more likely. In societies where economic development has been robust, we often observe a more peaceful coexistence. Countries that have invested in education, healthcare, and poverty reduction programs have managed to reduce crimes, social unrest, and radicalization. By addressing the root causes of violence and conflict, inequality, unemployment, and lack of opportunity, economic development becomes a powerful tool for maintaining peace. Economic development not only influences peace, but also plays a crucial role in fostering democracy. History has shown us that thriving economies often give rise to more robust democratic institutions. Why is that the case? Because when people's basic needs are met, they demand more from their governments. Democracy thrives when people have stake in their nation's future. Economic development creates the conditions for such engagement by cultivating informed and empowered citizenship. When individuals have access to economic resources, they are more likely to participate in democratic processes, demand accountability from their leaders, and engage in civic life. A prosperous economy empowers people to make informed choices, not just about their personal lives, but also about their political leaders. It allows citizens to hold governments accountable and challenge corruption, ensuring that democracy remains vibrant and functional. Conversely, economic hardship can undermine democratic values. In times of severe economic crisis, citizens may lose faith in democratic institutions, leading to the rise of populism and authoritarianism. A stable and growing economy also supports democratic institutions by providing resources necessary for effective governments and improving living standards for its citizens. Governments with strong economies can provide better public services, support rule of law, and uphold individual rights and freedoms. These, in turn, reinforce democracy, as citizens see their government as a legitimate and responsive force working for their well-being. On the other hand, economic decline can erode both peace and democracy. In times of financial crisis and prolonged recessions, governments can become susceptible to corruption and authoritarian tendencies. The desperation caused by economic hardship can lead to a rise in populism, extremism, and erosion of democratic norms, as seen in various parts of the world today. When citizens lose faith in their government's ability to provide for them, they may turn to leaders who promise quick fixes, often at the expense of democratic principles. In these environments, societies become unstable and prone to rising tensions, and the rule of law becomes vulnerable to manipulation. Peace, democracy, and economic development are not an isolated phenomena. They reinforce each other in symbiotic relationship. Sustainable economic development is essential for fostering peace, and as it reduces poverty, addresses inequality, and provides opportunities for people to improve their lives. Likewise, democracy thrives in environments where economic development empowers citizens to demand accountability and transparency from their leaders. However, achieving this balance requires thoughtful policy making. Economic growth must be inclusive, benefiting all segments of society, from urban elite to rural communities. Governments must invest in education, healthcare, and infrastructure, not just for the sake of growth, but to ensure that development is equitable. A democratic society fosters innovation, attracts investments, and ensures that economic benefits are distributed more equitably. This equitable distribution reduces social tensions and encourages peaceful coexistence. In contrast, in societies where political freedom is suppressed, economic growth may benefit only a few, leading to resentment and potential unrest. Moreover, democracy ensures that economic policies reflect the will of the people. When governments are accountable to their citizens, they are more likely to prioritize policies that promote long-term economic stabilities over short-term gains. This encourages sustainable development, which is crucial for lasting peace. Instead of conclusions, I decided to raise a couple of questions regarding economic development. All things I said previously were talking about how economic development has a positive effect on peace and democracy. And I wanted to ask all of you, maybe for further discussion, what is the relationship between economic development and demographic challenges that whole Europe is facing? If we're talking about economic development as we see it as a nation's growth of economy, as a growth in living standard, then we would expect to have more babies born. Or we have the situation the other way around. Europe is getting much older and less babies are being born in Europe. So maybe economic development does not have such a good influence on demographic challenges, or maybe I'm wrong. What about economic development and migration challenges? As countries are becoming more developed, if they have higher economic growth, they have better living standard, they attract people from other countries to go to work to those countries. How does that affect economic development of countries from which people are migrating? What about pressure on infrastructure when you look at those countries or cities when people move from rural areas to urban areas? Whether the uncontrolled influx of migrants can cause a situation when you have a radicalization in certain part of your society, or whether you can get a situation where you have ghettoization. All those things can be discussed in the context of economic development and migration issues. What about the lack of the workforce that whole Europe is basically facing currently? I wanted to ask especially young leaders in the context of economic development, can they afford today affordable housing, which means to buy an apartment or to have a house or to pay a decent rent? Because if you look at the economic development as a situation when you have fair wages for your work, you would be in the situation to buy a house or apartment with that wage. I don't see that happening, and how to solve that situation. What about economic development and climate change challenges? Higher the economic development is, we are facing more climate change challenges. We are having now in Croatia a couple of days ago, and we had big floods. Unfortunately, there were big floods with 23 people died in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So today you don't have to be an expert in climate change to see that we have extreme weather conditions which are doing a lot of harm to all people all around the globe. What about economic development and economic inequalities? We saw that the latest Nobel Prize winners from physics were practically, they are godfathers of artificial intelligence. Whether the artificial intelligence as a main driver of future growth increases economic inequalities among nations, whether that will be a problem for sustaining peace and democracy all around the world. What about things when you look at the problems or challenges of social mobility in the context of economic development? Whether economic development allows people like young leaders here to enhance and if they work hard to go up in the social ladder wherever they work, whether that comes with economic development or not. So these are a couple of things, a couple of issues that I wanted to raise here as questions and to try to have a good discussion afterwards. So thank you very much, and I'm open for all of your questions.